Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please silence all your cell phones. Take a moment of silent prayer. Thank you. I'll begin this morning's roll call with Commissioner Mike Stephen.
Here.
Commissioner Vicki Cos.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Jeff Culbertson's here. Commissioner Doug Smith.
Here.
All present and accounted for. Public comment. I don't have anybody signed up. Anybody in the room have a public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to administrative business. Donations to the courthouse repairs. Yes, Mr. Rampere.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Pursuant to your directives, your staff did look into the mechanisms whereby a GoFundMe page or some variation of that could collect donations for the courthouse renovations. I looked into it, and the IRS does issue to local governments a letter affirming that donations from the public to the local government for public purposes is generally tax deductible. I can undertake the process of obtaining that letter if you would wish. We will not need to set up a separate 501c3 corporation.
Okay.
So very little cost.
Other than me having to deal with the IRS, no cost at all.
But you deserve to.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So if we would do that, then we would have to keep this building on the historical registry.
The purpose of the donation has to be spelled out in order to obtain that letter. It would be as generic as courthouse renovations and repairs. I don't think it would affect the Historical Society's status.
Well,
So it could be a donation towards whatever repairs we make, whether it's on the historical list or not.
It does not need to be that specific, Commissioner.
But if you're going to make the repairs, wouldn't people want to think it's going to go back to the original form instead of just doing it? So doesn't that take away the option, if there is a way, to get around from spending twice as much as what we think it's going to cost?
That may well be the public perception, Commissioner.
Okay. Any other questions about that?
other than, I mean, when will we have a price or an actual bid or an engineer's estimate?
Currently we're soliciting for an engineer to draft the document for bids. We're not soliciting bids yet. Once we get that, then we'll solicit bids. That'll probably be 30 days. So I think last time we were here, I said it's probably between 60 and 90 days before we'll have actual numbers.
And we're going to ask for two bids.
We'll ask for two proposals, so that one that would bring it back to its current status, and one that would, if there is a more affordable route, just to fix the building and keep it operational.
Okay.
So that would not give us time, if this board decided that we put it on the ballot, if they let the public vote whether we kept it on the historical registry to fix it, or we took it off and fixed it.
Okay. David's got it.
Commissioner Smith, I do not believe Kansas law would allow a ballot question to that effect. Ballot questions cannot be advisory. That would be a decision to be made by this board.
I have no problem making that decision. I can tell you which way I'd go.
Okay.
So the logistics of the setting up the account could just be handled through staff?
Yes.
Would you need to have a vote of this board, or would you just have consensus?
I'll accept a consensus. Commissioner Stephen, I intend to make the application for that letter. If you do not wish me to do so, please so advise.
Mark, do you have any kind of rough timeline on when we might end up seeing bids?
60 to 90 days.
Okay. Anybody have anything else on that particular?
Not on that. I do have one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Have we gotten all the final laws that were passed in the slam dunk legislative session besides the star bonds? Anything official like LAVTR is gone, city county highway revenue sharing's gone?
Yes.
Well,
we brought this up. We brought this up a few weeks ago. I'm the last person in the world that likes to sue anybody, but what the state did was wrong. There was a law in place that allowed for cities and counties to receive funds back to go against property tax, and they just flat blew it off. They can say they did this, they can say do that, and they did do some things. But I'm still of the mindset, just my own personal opinion, is that we should engage, at least talk to somebody to see what they think about going after the state for this. This is wrong. It's no different than 30 years ago when the school did it. And the school won. This is a law that they broke. And they're trying to tell us to follow all their rules. No, they broke this law. They can say whatever they want. They pushed it down on a year. They did whatever. We're talking billions of dollars, folks. Do you know how much money would be put out there to have property tax, every citizen's property tax go down, and you just blew us off?
Ours would be more mills.
That's not acceptable to me.
And now the money's still going to be collected from this area.
That's right.
And it's going to be spent
Wherever
somewhere
they
else in the
choose.
state.
That's exactly
And it does
right.
not have to come back to us. It can be spent in any
And
way,
then-
shape, or form that is desired,
That's right.
anywhere they want to spend it, where it does not necessarily benefit the residents of Leavenworth County, where those funds were collected from Leavenworth County.
To be sent back to
With
Leavenworth
a portion
County for
sent
property tax relief.
Yeah.
Which is what I think gives the lawsuit teeth, is they still collected the 1.5%. They didn't stop collecting that. Even though they didn't give it to the cities and the counties, they still collected it. So
And they're still continuing to collect it.
You know.
So weren't we going
I'd
to,
say pull the trigger myself.
well, I thought we was going to engage or at least have a conversation with some, David, did you?
yeah, we were going to wait until the session was over to see
That's
what
right,
they ended up
that's
doing.
right, that's right.
And now that it's
It
over
is done.
and they actually did remove the LAVTR, then I think we should engage with a law firm to
Go back after the back money.
see about.
I mean, I
It
think
was
that
the law.
it'll be a long shot because it's their statutes they can live with or deny them or, abide by anything they choose to do.
They didn't change it 20 years ago.
But
They kept the law on the books.
Commissioners, 20 years ago, good point. They've been collecting the money for 20 years and not redistributing it. They amended the statutes each year so they wouldn't have to distribute it. And their statutes are kind of like local policies. You can amend them. They've amended them. Where the state got sideways with the school districts was constitutional. The
Right.
Constitution, they're required to adequately fund education, and that's where the schools sued them. And why they won is there was a study that the state did that said you weren't adequately funding education. So we can sue them. I think primarily it's going to be to make a point. I don't know that, I'm not an attorney, so I can't tell you, and I don't think anybody could probably tell you what our chances of winning that are, but I think it would be difficult because they amended the law each year to say they're not going to distribute those funds.
They did that every year, Mark. Well, let me say something else. Go one step further. It's money well spent. It puts people on notice, even if we know that if you're going to run for office, we expect you to have a high standard of ethics to be able to carry out the laws that are on the books and not mislead citizens who are in dire need of some kind of tax relief, especially property tax.
And my point is, if they didn't collect the 1.5%, the same time they stopped paying the cities and the counties, that's one thing. But they still collected the 1.5%, and then they kept it instead of giving it to us like the law said they were supposed to do. So if they didn't collect 1.5%, then maybe we wouldn't have a leg to stand on. But they are still collecting the 1.5% that's supposed to go to the counties and the cities for LAVTR.
I still think we should visit.
I do too, because everything they've done just shifts more back on the locals, and then they complain that taxes increase.
Then they run the thing, look what the county or the cities are doing to your mill levy
Right.
and this
Right.
crazy
Right, that's-
revenue.
Well, we've kept ours down.
That's right. Oh, you got to have revenue neutral, when that's a sham if there ever was.
Yes, there is. You're
And
exactly right.
and so this is, people need to understand it. The only reason they even addressed it this year is because Leavenworth County commissioners and a few of the folks that we got across the state would not let it die.
Right.
We've been pushing this ever since I've been here 3.5 years, and I know y'all were doing it before then. We may not win something, but I think Jeff's
Started
point is
8 years
valid.
ago, but-
Yeah, I think Jeff's point's valid.
And I've got a long list of cities and counties that want to join
Yeah.
in that lawsuit with us. We were just waiting, like I said, for the session to be over to see what they were going to do.
Take it on.
Because the legislators
So
do
you're
not
saying,
care.
you would like us to meet with an attorney just to have consultation about this?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly where we're
I-
at now, I think.
Do you have a attorney that's versed in this type of law?
Commissioners, I was contacted by a firm in the Kansas City area, a very reputable firm, expressing an interest in examining such an endeavor and a willingness to meet with you. That was a result of your public comments several weeks ago. I would be, at your direction, contact that firm again and provide greater detail and see what their response is. But I anticipate they would be willing to meet with you. I would state this, though, however, Mr. Lawford's words to you are entirely correct. It's hard to argue that a body is not complying with the law when that body can rewrite the law to circumvent whatever claim you make against them.
But David, don't you think it's also, when I go out, and if I was going out after somebody, I'd get somebody that's specialized in that. There may be things out there that none of us are aware of that they would look at. So I think we should at least have them visit or have a conversation with them.
I think it's
Commissioners,
our
the firm
duty.
that contacted
Yeah.
me is not a personal injury. They don't advertise on TV that, if you get in a wreck, they'll
We don't collect and you collect?
It's a firm that I believe has credentials and qualifications, but I'll work through your administrator to
And
I'm
that's
fine
something
with that.
presented to you.
So, I'm talking about all this. I've been thinking about this the last few days, but that I wanted to peek and testify again for that cap.
Yep.
on
You
property
wasted your
taxes.
time, didn't you?
Well, I was just struck by the fact that the legislature, when they desire something, like the
Star bonds, how
like-
they can do it within
well,
24
like
hours?
the in my
Yeah.
view, an illusion that you're going to pull the Chiefs over to Kansas, and that's something that you really want. They were able to put it together in 24 hours. But we've been talking about property tax relief for 5 years, but the cap for 3 years, and we cannot even get them to take a vote in the House. And my own representative left the room when we had the hearing.
And all these people need to remember that when they go to the polls. I mean, at the state level, everyone needs to remember that.
And this lawsuit is not about forcing them to pay the LABTR from this point forward. We would just have to reintroduce a new bill to do that. This is about the billions of dollars that they've already collected that the law said was supposed to come to the cities and counties, but the state, even though they still collected it, kept it instead of
And they're
giving it to the city
continuing
and state.
to give other exemptions in ways that are going to remove revenue from the ability
Yep.
of local governing bodies to operate. Because one of the things that, are available to us oftentimes are sales tax, and they are eliminating our ability to collect adequate sales tax. What are we going to do with some of the exemptions that have been made through this, last
Without
minute
an
legislation?
impact study being done, how it's going to affect us. I mean,
So-
I'm a little worried about that because of our sales tax projects, how we pay our bond
Right.
payments on that. And we have no idea how that's going to affect us yet. So I'd say we almost got to stop bonding any more money in the near future because we may not be able to make the payments.
Then people need to realize that that's going to have a direct impact on
Yeah,
services.
but I agree with Commissioner Culberson on that. It's not like you're going to get the LABTR reinstated, but you may get something to replace it
To directly offset property
to
tax.
offset the property
Yeah.
tax. Because
I mean,
that's
I
what the
haven't
money's
heard-
collected for.
Yeah.
A valid solution from anybody that they have moved forward into. Because I think the local governing bodies have tried to come up with more solutions than our state
Absolutely.
representatives.
Nobody's lobbying us, though.
The LABTR was the right
Right.
direction.
Yeah, but I'm talking
But
about
we're the
paid
ones that are
lobbying.
getting the blame.
the LAVTR was a step in the right direction, relieving some of the stress on property tax and putting it onto sales tax. It was the right idea, especially for Leavenworth County. The boilerplate process that the state put on all 105 counties that you will use property tax to fund your county budget doesn't work for Leavenworth County. We're almost 50% property tax exempt. So the other 50% has to pick up that slack.
But when we had
And
to
if
leave
some
with sales tax
legislatures have a way,
collections
they'd have more of it.
that we could collect,
Yeah. So
Well, I think we should definitely meet with the attorney and see what our options are. I mean, we don't even know what our options are, and we're lay people on the law, so let's
Right.
meet with them.
yeah, Mr. Van Paris, can you take care of that?
Commissioners, I'll set something up, and I'll just offer this editorial comment. If the state won't redistribute the LAVTR funds, just stop collecting them.
Up front.
Or replace it with something.
Well, it's a thought.
I kind of asked about that before.
Yeah, we did.
I mean,
Don't think it's
The
illegal.
treasurer didn't want to go to jail.
Well, that they would consider funding the courts and paying for
The lawsuit.
Something.
court-appointed attorneys and stuff like that. with that
Commissioners, I
money.
wasn't suggesting that you direct your local treasurer to not collect those funds, because that's what the law says. Ask the state to amend the laws to just not collect it at the beginning.
Yeah, I thought
Right.
that was going to come hand in hand when they abolished LAVTR, and
Yeah.
evidently it didn't.
Right, exactly.
They used to
They're
give us
still
and have the
collecting
slush fund.
it.
Maybe that's their slush
Yeah.
fund.
Yeah, they're still
Still
collecting
collecting.
it. So why not? Why didn't they say that they were going to no longer collect 1.5%? I mean,
Exactly my point. Okay.
If you want to get people and up to people that are responsible, and I've been preaching this for about 6 months, elect people that have experience in county, city, or school districts who have been in charge and had to answer the people one-on-one. They'll know what the problems are. When you get up to Topeka, unless you've been there for a few years, and a lot of people don't stay there that long, then you're new. In your first year, you're blinded by all this. You just follow the leadership, and the leadership isn't always doing what's best for the citizens of Kansas.
No.
most of the time these days they're not, period.
Agreed. Okay.
They're bought by lobbyists.
So Mr. Van Paris will look into seeking out a law firm for us to address.
I'll work for your county administrator to do so.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Next, set dates for budget hearings.
Commissioners, hopefully by the end of this week, I will have met with all of the departments to have gone over their budgets. I'd like to schedule their hearings with you. I call them hearings, basically, it's just a meeting. I'd like to get that scheduled with you all to make sure it fits within your schedules. I know some of you are out of town different times throughout the month. Our next meeting is the 3rd. Obviously, that's pretty close, and it's also a holiday week, so I figured we would avoid that. But then the 10th, the 17th, and the 24th, I believe, are our next 3 meetings. So if you have a preference on one of those dates, or if you have a preference that I avoid any of those weeks, please.
Just one thing, and we could also pick different days, but I think that going up, what was you say the last date that you had on the?
I think if I was just going on our normal Wednesday days.
But I think we don't want to get too close to the deadline,
No.
Yeah, the
you
sooner the
know,
better.
and not be able to.
I just like sooner.
So if we have to have more days
Yeah,
that
if
we
we have to
have,
do it other than a Wednesday, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I am too.
that was just.
I'm going to be out the week of the 17th for the Republican National Convention.
So the 10th in that week.
So the week of the 10th.
That gives me an idea, because I've called Todd across the street. I want to go over there and walk through all their procedures and stuff before he gets into his budget. I think, Mike, you were going to join me, I believe, at one time. So I called him the other day. I just want to see what I don't know. So those times are good. Okay.
But
So I'll do the week of the 10th. I will schedule I'll start doing the scheduling on that day of the 10th for after our meeting, our normal meeting. We'll start going into budget. If I need to go longer than one day, I'll take it to the 11th.
Okay.
Works for me.
Me too.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. That'll work. Any other discussion on that? Next, so we have some of these lots that the FEMA put into the county's name and the city's name. They're FEMA buyout flood lots. Mr. Van Paris the county has leased farming and access rights to several of those tracts acquired by the county through the FEMA buyouts. Would those leases be subject to any prescriptive easements that existed at the time of the county being granted those leases?
Yes. Commissioners, you can only grant what you have. And in this case, if there were a prescriptive easement across the property that was purchased by FEMA and later conveyed to you and then later leased by you, each of those transactions would be subject to that prescriptive easement.
Okay. And then you're familiar with the issue we're having with one of the local farmers trying to use one of those tracts that we have for access to their hay fields. So can you follow up with that and let
Yes,
them know?
I can contact the leaseholder.
Okay. That's all I have for administrative business. Anybody have anything else? If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, begin voting with Commissioner Stevens.
Aye.
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 Consent agenda passes 5-0.
I'm assuming the attorney listed on there, the court-appointed attorney. You have to pay.
Yes.
That's another state unfunded
That's another
mandate.
state unfunded mandate.
The list goes on. Formal board actions. Consider a motion that the proposed final plat as outlined in case DEV 24043 be approved with conditions that the plat is compliant with the county zoning and subdivision regulations as set forth in the staff report, as adopted by the Planning Commission, and as substantiated by the facts. Testimony and evidence presented be accepted by this board, and that the conditions set forth in the staff report be made part of this approval. Morning, John.
Morning,
How
folks.
are you?
Before you, I believe, is case DEV 2429, which is a final plat for Orchard Meadows. This plat is zoned R143, so we are talking about 1 acre tracts. They are proposing to plat this parcel into 12 separate lots. They are also proposing to install a public roadway that would connect Orchard Road to 166th Street. Due to the length of the lot and to get that connection point, they did not meet the block length requirement in our subdivision regulations. The Planning Commission did vote to approve the exception to that block length due to the constraints of the lot and surrounding area. The Planning Commission then did vote 8-0 to recommend approval of this plat to you. If you have any other questions, happy to answer them.
So that's DEV 2429. That's B
Yeah,
in
I
our
was gonna say,
list.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's not
We can
clear.
go-
Yeah,
we
I
can
saw
take
the
that.
one.
Yeah, we can go ahead and do B
I'll just
first,
go ahead.
just so you guys know. It's the second one instead of the first
Yeah,
one.
that's
Okay,
all
that's
done.
was
Yeah.
I'll-
Yep.
I don't have any questions
I
on it.
don't.
Does anybody else?
Nope.
Which one did you say?
B. It'd be B, the second one.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I'm just reminding us every time we
On the
make an
next
exception,
page,
we have to
next
make an
week.
exception for
Flip
others.
that
I'm
page.
just
There you go.
want to
B.
keep reminding us that that's, when we deviate from just
And the exceptions probably made based on trying to allow them to have access to their land.
Well, their connection point was a predetermined connection point. That's why they had to ask for the exception. So if this were an original plat, then staff definitely would have argued
been
against it,
consented.
requiring
Yeah.
1,200 feet. But in this particular instance, it made sense because, again, it was a predetermined connection point on a previous plat from years ago.
No, I'm just reminding us that,
Yeah.
those things can come back around and.
This is in the Bayshore area. Anyway, I move that we approve case DEV 24029 to be approved with conditions that the plat is compliant with the Leavenworth County zoning and subdivision regulation as set forth by staff and is adopted by the Planning Commission and substantiated by the facts, testimony, and evidence presented. Be accepted by this board that the conditions set forth by staff made part of this approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, begin voting with Commissioner Stevens.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Next, consider a motion that is proposed final plat as outlined in case DEV 2443. Go ahead, Amy.
All right, so this is case DEV 2443, which is a final plat request for Horvat Estates. The property is zoned RR 2.5. It is an existing parcel with a house and accessory structures. They are proposing to split it into 2 lots. One would retain the house and structures, the other would be a new lot. This request did have an exception that was granted by the approved by the Planning Commission for the lot width to lot depth on Lot 1. If you look at the location map, you will notice that there is floodplain that flows along the back of this parcel. They based their rationale based off of that. The Planning Commission did vote 9-0 to recommend approval of the final plat for your consideration. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Any further discussion or questions on this item?
Not really.
Not I.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move that we approve case DEV 24043 to be approved with conditions that the plat is compliant with Leavenworth County zoning and subdivision regulation as set forth in the staff report as adopted by the Planning Commission, as substantiated by the facts, testimony, and evidence presented, be accepted by this board, and that the conditions set forth in the staff report be made of this approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. No further discussion. Begin voting with Commissioner Stevens.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, guys, gals.
I think that's all we have on presentations. So we'll move on to presentations and discussion items. Mr. Stephen, you have anything for this week for us to share? Ms. Cause, do you have anything?
Yesterday, I participated in the Workforce Partnership, both the CEO meeting and the board meeting, and then I also attended the High Prairie Township meeting last evening, having discussion of the decision of their board to go on a standalone and not contract with the city of Lansing for fire protection services.
How many people showed up for that? About
At least 50. At least.
How long did it last?
About an hour and a half.
Oh, that's not too bad.
It was. I mean, and it was very, very calm and civil conversation that was had, and different concerns expressed. And
did you find that most people just didn't know about what was going on?
There were those who did not. There were those that weren't even familiar with who the representatives were. There were those who supported the standalone. There were those who had a lot of questions and concerns about what that would mean and the ability for fire protection to be provided to the township. In the kind of as there was a gap, there would be a gap kind of in forming a fire department. Manning a fire department, and I think there was a lot of discussion around the fact that right now it's very difficult to find firefighters as a general rule, and so with both, even with the city of Lansing, how is this going to, are they going to? There were a lot of questions and that were unanswered, and I don't know the answers to those questions, so I was there to listen.
Big one I get are the High Prairie folks thinking about hiring firefighters,
yes,
fire chief, or
yes,
just volunteer.
No, they are looking at using the revenue that they collect through the mills to hire a full-time fire chief and then one part-time firefighter.
I'm sure the idea of that is to keep the ISO ratings lower.
That is that is part of their plan, and there are and they had a discussion, and I think that Mr. Kellogg was right in telling people to look up the ISO and how those determinations are made, because it's not just on your response times. It's also, there's other things, the qualifications of the people who are providing the services, and distance, equipment, the equipment available, but they know that there's nothing they can do until they divide the assets,
right? And
that's going to be through mediation. And
did they talk at all about combining with Alexandria Town?
No, they did not. They at this point, a lot of jurisdictions are not wanting to have any kind of conversations until such time as this is all like December 31st. which is when Lansing officially will be out of.
Yep, yes,
This
they will.
part taken care of first.
And so they want the different jurisdictions, they indicated that they have had conversations with different jurisdictions, but that none of those individuals involved are really interested until all of the other things are settled. So
I know
That's
Alexander
what-
is really struggling because they're only half a township fire protection already.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
well, I'm just there. My understanding by what I listened to was that they have reached out and had questions about. I know that right now, even with Fire District number 1, the city of Leavenworth has pulled out of temporarily the automatic response. And because there's I learned, so you learn things. There's there's mutual aid and there's automatic response, and
Yeah.
so that's kind of where they are. So there was really nothing that was solved or settled. It was just a lot of questions, and some of those questions were answered, others were not. And
Do you know when the assets will be divided? They have a date on it?
I don't believe so. I think that that the city of Lansing, as of yesterday, just had their
They did.
completed their whatever. What's
Yeah,
it?
and they're going to be negotiations.
How much everything's worth, and so
coming down.
and then they're going to do kind of a mediation thing to decide. I know that Lansing has 60%,
Right.
High Prairie has 30%, and Delaware has 10%. That is of as far as what is estimated to be the assets or the at least what's been contributed over the years.
What High Prairie has to do, and they do whatever they think's right for them. I'm totally for that. But Delaware has made it known that they're getting out.
Right.
If they have to be held for 18 months, they have to be. If that's what the law says, that's what the law says. But at the same time, then High Prairie will have to do without Delaware. And my other concern is too. Delaware sits a long way from where High Prairie is at. How are you going to really affect them? My suggestion was just to let. It doesn't mean anybody's right or wrong. My suggestion was just let Delaware out. High Prairie come back in and let us, because we're the one that has to draw the boundary lines, and I will not support drawing the boundary lines till we get all this made up, and then let them go do their thing, because all you're doing is delaying that 18 months that's going to do that. But everybody's got their own opinion, what they're doing, and what they think's right. I hate to see it come down to this, because I thought it was a good plan when Mayor Bernard and I and David did it many years ago. But it is what it is. But now we just need to get through it and go our different ways. And once you go your different ways, that doesn't mean that Lansing, and I can't speak for them, but I just being out there knowing folks. That's not saying they wouldn't be a mutual aid with High Prairie, or High Prairie wouldn't have a mutual aid. This is just getting ugly, and I wish we could get this resolved. But it's going to probably take another 6 months. We'll know, because Lansing's out. Anyway,
did they say they were going to set up another meeting, Vicki?
They have. High Prairie has obtained legal counsel. They indicated they have a meeting with their legal counsel sometime in the next week, and then after that they would, maybe if they were going to have further meetings or discussions, they would announce that, and they would announce that on Nextdoor and the Leavenworth Times on their Facebook social media page, and
nothing scheduled right now.
But nothing is scheduled right now, other than their next township board meeting, which, and it was also brought up that on the 20th, it's kind of like the budgets have to be submitted to the clerk, and so a lot of stuff needs to happen between now and the 20th of July. So, but I do not know, and I think that they'll know more about how they want to move forward once they have spoken with an attorney, is my understanding.
Yeah, that does sound like it's going to be complicated because of the budgets.
Right, and that does complicate it, because the fire district needs to know where things are, because if the fire district needs, and then the township needs to know. It's kind of very convoluted at this point.
There's a lot of moving parts.
And we're not part of it, so.
Yeah, that's right.
As I said, I did not and do not have an opinion. I need to stay out of it.
Is that all you had?
Pardon?
Is that all you had?
That's all.
I just got one thing. Just reminder, this Saturday, starting about 3 p.m. or 3:30, Lansing's having their 4th of July gala, and be at the Lansing High School. They've moved it to this year. The schools were good enough to let them work out there. There'll be games for the kids and all kind of stuff, and starting at 3, and the fireworks will start about 9:30. One thing I might point out is there's limited parking, but there will be shuttles running from on Westbury on Lansing Intermediate and Lansing Elementary School. But it's always a good time out there.
You can park at David's house and see it.
Yeah, that's true. Because David will be having a party sitting out there. I can see it from mine too, pretty good.
Yeah.
my
Oh,
daughter's
okay.
house
Mike
right
Smith's
there.
house. Parking.
I get my girls to sell Kool-Aid again like they did yesterday, raise money for them. Anyway, that's all I got.
Okay. I had Leavenworth City meeting last night. They were going over their plans for Camp Leavenworth festivities, and then I'd mention that City of Easton's having fireworks on the 4th of July with a parade previous of the fireworks and a band, and they've got some more activities for kids to do. So that should be a good time in the City
Fun
of Easton.
time.
If anybody's looking for a place to go see some big fireworks, that's all I have.
I attended the Kansas Livestock Beef Improvement at J&N Ranch Saturday night. A little warm, then a storm blew through, and that was a good time, though. And attended the Mark Budget and Personnel meeting. I was unable to stay for the Board of Directors meeting, but Commissioner Culberson was in on that one, so really nothing else to report.
Okay. If nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion
to adjourn.
Second.
Commissioner Stevens?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Next one.
Yeah, that's the short one. How long?